what do you think is the current projection for the art scene at the moment? Meaning that we seem to be in a really rough spot because it seems to be going on longer than it should have. Basically, after World War II, we had the MFAs come in. All this horrible stuff started happening. Like it seems like you might not be the only great artist who's actually being skipped over, who's being missed at the moment. Why is this happening? At what point do we leave this dark? Do we leave this dark ages that we actually seem to be in?
I mean, it's cyclical. I mean, from 1910 or so to about 1970, 1980, arguably, you had a 70-year run of the arts in America that I don't think any other country has ever had. And if
Yeah,
you
I've
look
heard
at
you say that
literature,
before. Yeah.
if you look at films, I put it at 1980 when Reagan came in to be president. Everything got dumbed down. Everything got dumbed down.
Mm.
You know, people who complain about political correctness rose as a direct opposition to Reaganism. So if you're some right wing troglodyte who wants to complain about political correctness, it got its start as direct opposition to Reagan. Now, I'm not a believer in the government sponsoring the arts because that doesn't work. But the reason that things got so bad was uh, directly because of Reaganism, and it's just who knows what it's going to be. Um, uh, Alex Sherman, for example, apparently is doing well in his non-arts career financially, and he says he's gonna start a press maybe in a couple of years, and me and my wife Jessica and a few other people in the Cosmoetica sort of circle are going to be the people that he would publish. But again, it would be a small press. But who knows? It could be someone like you or some other artist, maybe some kid who's 16 years old who's going to find Cosmoetic in 5 years, read all the stuff, and then in a few years after that is going to contact like you, and maybe this kid actually knows about art, and maybe this kid has connections, or he's one of, and these little things, it's the butterfly effect. Something happens, and uh, who knows? Well, one of the things I'd love to do is I'd love to find a documentary filmmaker in this age that we live in, the Netflix age. There's so many bad documentaries. I remember some woman. I call them vanity documentaries. They're wrote. I remember, or she'd made a film about her father, and there was absolutely nothing noteworthy about the father. No reason for the film to be made, but it got onto Netflix or whatnot, and I'm sure it got seen by probably a few 100,000 people. Now, as 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 many hits as I've gotten on Cosmoetica, a good example is on my YouTube channel. I get 1/1000th of traffic because it's a totally different medium. It's like why did most silent film stars not make it in the sound era? It's a different medium. Why didn't most radio stars not make it in television? It's a different medium. And in a sense, Cosmoetica got lucky in that it preceded blogs in 2001. Blogs didn't come along until about 03, 04. And it sort of rode the blog wave of the 15, 16 years ago, got popular, and it's sort of always, and now Cosmoetica is basically, because I don't put anything written up there anymore for like since 15 or 16, so it's been 5 or 6 years since I put something up there. Um, but so I've been doing the interviews, and my hope too is that someone might want to do a documentary on Cosmoetica or my work, but also too that someone could find all of these interviews I do with people, and even if I wasn't an artist, my 333 right now Dan Schneider video interviews, the stuff I have on YouTube, again, there's no one that I know of. I mean, I've seen interview series where people will interview people all in one field. Like I'm going to interview people who are social psychologists, or people who are computer savvy or whatnot. And I see a lot of those interviews, and some of the interviews are passable. Most of them are terrible interviewers. But if you look at a lot of the stuff, the people I interview, I mean, I get a lot of people who will, after the interview, or even sometimes in the body of the interview, they'll say, "Wow, Dan, you ask questions no one else has asked me." A lot of times, someone might be 40 years in their field, and we're talking about something. I ask a question, and they don't know, have no idea. And I say, how could you not know? How did this idea not get to you? You've spent 30 or 40 years in your scientific field or your artistic field, and you never had that thought. You had to listen to me bring it up to you. It amazes me sometimes, but then again, that's just how I approach life and look at things more differently than other people, I guess.
Mm. I see. Boy, let me see. Boy, so you just published it. You just did a book right now. Let's see here. So let's see. I'm a quarter of the way through Vincetti Brothers. I just finished Tumbleweed. So we can wrap it up a little bit. But let me just ask you a couple questions about Tumbleweeds real quick.
Okay.
So it's kind of interesting because I'm sure a lot of people are going to read True Life and then they're going to read Tumbleweeds. And like me, other people will read Tumbleweeds and they'll read True Life. They'll see a lot of the parallels between your life and whatnot. Let me back up. Let me ask another question. You did not plot out the events in True Life. Did you plot out the narrative at all for Tumbleweeds?
Well, Tumbleweeds is sort of a fictive condensation of the 4 True Life books with some other things thrown in. There's one scene in Tumbleweeds where Manny Cole, his father, who drove a health department van, comes and gives free vaccine shots or whatever it is to people, and that's actually something that actually happened, and it was amazing. It's very similar to what happened in a scene in A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, but I did plot it out a bit more because it's fiction. But again, each of those books you'll see has 64 chapters. So what I would do is I would maybe fill in, okay, here's 42 chapters that I know are going to be in. I plot the general outline, but I also have blank chapters because, as I said, once I get through the first 7 chapters or writing stuff, and sometimes I don't do that. Sometimes I will just go around and I'll do chapter 43 might be the chapter that I wrote first in the book. But as I fill things in, then I'll say, oh, okay, now I know. I thought of a character, for example, in the Vincetti Brothers, 2 characters that came into that book as I'm writing it are called Big Frank Conchetto, a mobster, and the Norwegian, which later I gave the book a Norwegian in the family to, because of those 2 characters that arose in the middle of writing Vincetti Brothers. So, I mean, I had a bare skeleton outline, but what actually came through, that's something that, as I said, 20% of the way in, I said, oh, I got to put this in a chapter. Oh, I don't have anything for chapter 51. Let me put it there. And there's a famous quote by John Huston. I think it's John Huston, although it's been attributed to other people. He's a Hollywood director from the golden age of Hollywood who said something like, a good film or a great film is 4 or 5 great scenes, and then you string the stuff together and you have a great film. And
I've heard that too.
Yeah, in certain ways, there's some truth to that. I make everything great. I don't like to have just passages or a chapter that's just connected. There has to be something in each of the chapters. But as you have the overall plot and you start filling things in, it's sort of like people, if you've ever seen people putting insulation in their homes. They use this foam, they spray the foam in the house, and then it swells up to 10 times its size. Well, that's sort of what I do with the art, is that, I'll put down the basics of that, and then I might go in on a day for, say, a scene that I'm writing in a play or whatnot, and I'll say, okay, this is the scene where this character and that character are going to argue. I don't know what the argument's going to be about, but as I'm writing it, something from my undermind comes up. It's the convective way my mind works, like a convection current. Something's stirring in my id, and then vroom, it comes up, and bam, I'll say, oh, so this is what the argument's about. Then I'll say, oh, the argument that I had in scene 11 of that play, now I need to go back to scene 3 and just throw in, sometimes maybe it's just a word or a sentence that acts as the augury for what's coming in scene 11. And And that's how you do things organically. You let you play. You're open to things, and as you're starting out any work, every choice you make starts opening things up. It's like entering a home. There's the one door that opens there, but you can go in this room or that room. If you go in this room or rather than that room, then you have to go into those 2 or 3 other rooms, etc. And then there comes a point, though, when you've passed the 50% mark stuff, and each choice you make starts closing things down, so that the work, you might not know what the ending is going to be, but when you're getting to 85, 90% in, the ending becomes inevitable. Not that it's cliched in that sense, inevitable, but it crystallizes and say, that's how I'm going to end it. And so I'll have a work for. There are many times I've had a work, and I said, this is my idea of what it's going to be like, but I don't know the specifics. When I get to the end of the work, I will have hit most of the points. Some I may not have the points that I was going to have in, but I'll have something better than I originally started out with, because I've been open to letting the influences come into me and letting my mind go. Creativity isn't just one thing. I'm going to write this. When I wrote A Norwegian in the Family, the first thing that came to me was the first word said by the Norwegian that opened the book. But I didn't know what the rest of the book was going to be like. I thought that book was going to be smaller than the Vincetti Brothers, which is like 603,000 words. I thought A Norwegian in the Family was going to be maybe 250, 300,000 words. Still a long book, but then it became 2.5 million.
Yeah. It's a very long. It takes a long time for it to load on my computer. It's very interesting. I can't think of any other book that's quite that long. Boy. Well, I can't wait till I'm done with the Vincetti Brothers. But at the same time, I don't really want to finish it. It's a great pleasure to be reading it, actually. Like, it's nice. Every single chapter, there's actually like a point to it. I just passed the point where the Vincetti Brothers' his sons are being bullied. Yeah. And then the story is like how he gets after them. But then Manny Cole's like, now look, this might be apocryphal. I don't know, but this is accordingly what he made them do, but maybe it's not what he made them do. Yeah. And I'm really enjoying myself so far. I must say, I'm really enjoying myself. Yeah. Real quick, before we, unless you want to say something about that.
No, go ahead.
Before we finish, because I think we've gone pretty far. I would really like. I see this interview as like, we talk about true life, we're talking about arts and stuff like that. But I have a lot of friends back home who I really want to read your stuff. And before this point, it's just been like, well, I've met this guy on the internet. He sent me some novels and stuff, and I want you to read them. I think this is a really good introduction to. I could send them this video and tell them like, why. Here's more information for you. I just have a couple quick questions. A selfish question, actually, because you have a lot of opinions on certain writers. Like your opinions on Shakespeare is pretty big, pretty interesting for me, quite frankly. Because it's funny how most people about 10 or 12 of his best poems, but no one knows who wrote King Jonathan. Shakespeare wrote King Jonathan, but no one's read it. No one has any idea what's inside King Jonathan because it's not as good as the other ones, I guess.
Well, is that one of the disputed plays? Because King Jonathan doesn't. He has 37 supposed canonical plays, and then there's 4 or 5 others. So is that one of the 4 or 5 that's disputed?
Oh, I have no idea. All I know is it's in his works that they include in every single collected editions. I'm not sure if it's not, but even if it's not, then there's other ones that literally just no one talks about them. Mm-hmm. No one talks about them. The guy who supposedly never wrote a bad word, and 60% of his body of work is not even really studied that often. Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm not one of those people that think Shakespeare was a bad writer, and I don't think Shakespeare was not Shakespeare. Everything points to Shakespeare being William Shakespeare or whatever it was written, and I don't think he was gay. Some of the poems that are supposedly the Dark Lady poems or poems written to men, he's taking a fucking female point of view in 90% of them, and the 1 or 2 that might be from a male perspective are not even really particularly sexual, but a lot of people like to make that kind of shit up. Shakespeare was certainly a great writer. If you're going to tell me that Shakespeare was the greatest writer in English language or world history, well, that doesn't say much about the world then, because I said this before. If I was like Woody Allen and went to sleep for 1,000 years in some they cut off my head and froze my head and then revived me in 1500 years or something, and I came and there was a cult of Schneider, like there's a cult of Shakespeare, I'd be like, what the fuck happened? I would be that would, I mean, there should be in 1500 years at least, you know, a few dozen writers that have gone beyond me in that time, because if they haven't, then the culture and human mind has stagnated.